And so as a result, when I'm planning for a talk like this, for about 24 hours, I made the mistake of clearing my calendar today so that I could prepare for the talk, which is a really big mistake, because what I do is go into a kind of preparation vortex in which I think, well, I'll have a whole day, I'll wait till the day, and then I'll get clear on what I'm going to talk about. And so I went for a long walk, went and sat in 2 cafes. The second cafe, I didn't need any coffee, so I just sat there in the depot, hoping that they wouldn't ask me if I wanted a drink, and then realised that I needed to move again because they'd start to resent my presence. So anyway, I think you'd be embarrassed if you knew how much I'd invested in this talk. I'm embarrassed, and I don't have the epic tale that Chris had, which I thought was extraordinary. I do want to say I think he does remind me of Hugh Laurie's steely cousin, and sort of version of Superman, and Fiona's incredible love and care. But I do have a story of sorts, and I must start by taking this jumper off because my wife would kill me if she knew I was wearing my V-neck for this talk. We carefully designed my clothing so that it would be just exuberant enough without being daring. Like it? She said that's your friendly shirt, Laurence. And actually underneath I'm wearing a stag t-shirt. That's my power animal. Just me and Narina know about that, and now you do too. So, and sometimes I'll put my glasses on as a sort of pseudo-academic mask because it makes me feel safe. But it also helps me to see, because I am also losing my eyesight, not my peripheral vision, but just the normal stuff that happens when you're our age. And by the way, it turns out I'm the youngest speaker so far. I'm only 49. But I am in the what I call the mince grinder of life, because I have 2 small children. One of them is 5 months old, and one of them is going to turn 4 in a couple of weeks. So my life consists of not sleeping and then working, and that's it. There's nothing else. No joy, no fun. This is about the most fun thing that's happened to me since Christmas. So thank you very much for being part of it. I should explain that the title of this talk, which was is Embrace Your Inner Pessimist. I named it that because Anthea asked me to come up with a title before Christmas, in December or even November, and I thought, I've got no idea what I'm going to talk about in January. I never know that far in advance what I'm going to talk about, so I just came up with something, and then I got confused about that too. So today I spent quite a lot of time thinking, am I going to talk about Embrace Your Inner Pessimist or not? And I've decided that my talk is called What Am I Going to Talk About? So I hope that helps those of you who also feel confused about what to do in life. And my talk, because I am in the mince grinder of life at the moment, and because, well, for reasons you'll find out when I tell my tale, is also about mental health and about how difficult it is. It's so difficult to be a person. I mean, I find it very, very difficult every day. And not just to be a person, but to be more than one person. Because what I'm noticing about being a person is that you have to manage yourself. And yourself is this, like this other being who has his or her own moods and preferences, and doesn't always want to do what you want him or her to do. And if you're self-employed, which I am, as Chris is, and perhaps many, hands up how many of you are self-employed, by the way? So Lewes is a town of self-employed, isn't it? I mean, does anyone have a job here? Good for you! paying the economy, making it go around. As self-employed people, you'll know that to manage yourself is not an easy thing. I mean, you're literally your own boss, and it makes having a bad boss seem like a holiday, because you have to be your boss and your employee, and that is, you're already in trouble because you're split into two people. Anyway, so being self-employed has given me an insight into the struggle of being a person who has to manage himself and to get the most out of myself and be productive and creative. And I have all my life been obsessed by the longing to be creative and to be in flow. By the way, can you see my face adequately? Because I feel like this thing slightly blocks me. It's okay? I feel slightly protected from you, but also hidden. I've always been obsessed with flow and the flow state. I would call myself a flow addict. If there were an anonymous gathering of people who are addicted to flow, that would be me in it. Because every day I think about how can I get into the state of flow. I don't call it flow all the time. I just think, how can I feel like working? Because so often I don't feel like working at all. I feel when I sit down at my desk and I open my laptop, I just feel like closing it again immediately and retreating with my body goes into some kind of panic mode. And at some deep level, I think I've become allergic to work. It wasn't always this way, so that's me when I was young. So the tale I'm going to tell is the tale of me, so forgive me, it's just about me and my life. I was in I was in cafe number 1 today, trying to figure out what I was going to write, and I had my notes out, and I heard this voice from the table next door saying, "Don't do it, Laurence." And I looked over, it was Peter Owen Jones, the vicar from Pearl. And I said, "Look, did I look that worried?" And he said, "Yes, maybe you're worrying too much." And I said, "Well, I'm doing a talk tonight at the zoo." He said, "Tell one story from the heart, without notes, just one story." And I took that to heart. I didn't want him to feel like I didn't know that already, so I just said, yeah, I know that. But I realised that the story I have to tell, unfortunately, the only story of interest I have to tell is the story of my life, and the weird life that I've had. I wasn't weird when I was small, I was just a kid. That's me playing with the grey furs, our cat. Sweet, innocent, pudding bowl haircut. But then I grew up, and I became a management consultant. Lots of things happened in between then and then, but I won't go into them. Just to say that at some point in my early life, I stepped away from myself. I don't know how or when it happened exactly. It could have happened when I was sent to school in another country when I was 10. And when I say I was sent there, it was kind of my idea. We agreed on it, but when you're 10, you don't really know what you're doing. Or it could have been earlier. Who knows, when I was a toddler and something bad happened to me. But at some point I became disconnected from that inner child, and I realised that I need to try and get back in. And the way I wanted to get back in when I was 18 or 19 was to be posh and acceptable. And I got into Cambridge, and then I got into McKinsey & Co., which is a management consulting firm, and it's a bit elite, and I was quite happy with that. But I was also really unhappy. So that's me. That was my first employed photo, and you can see that sort of smug, slick look on my face that you see on people in the city of London. And if you see people with that look, just know that inside they're dying. I was smoking pot in the evening and stuff. But and I felt as if, even though there I was, I felt as if it was all wrong. But I couldn't put words to that yet. I just knew that I needed to get somewhere else quite quickly. I think the same kind of phase, really. I'm going to jump into my 30s. That's the beginning of my 30s, or perhaps my late 20s. Throughout my 20s, I felt increasingly convinced that I was in the wrong kind of life, Even my friends seemed like the wrong kind of friends. It was odd. It was like I was in the wrong body. And being the son of an actress and a hippie, both of whom met while doing a spiritual practice, I kind of suspected that deep down I didn't belong in these places, and I wasn't a businessman at heart, and I wanted to be a creative. And so I decided that I was going to become a writer and a comedian, and that was going to save me and bring me back to that childhood that I'd lost. And so began my blonde ambition phase. So professional headshots that I got done in Los Angeles in 2003, which I only stopped using about a year ago. And then I started doing stand-up comedy. I did a one-man show at the Edinburgh Festival, which was a satire of life coaching. Because when I first encountered life coaching, I thought it was so ridiculous and American and alien that I wanted to satirize it. And then oddly, I became a life coach. And today I am a coach. It's how I make my living. So life imitates art, in my life anyway. That was the flyer for my Edinburgh show. I was called Gus No Fuss. I was a sadistic Australian life coach. And someone once looked at that flyer, a young lady at the time, and said, "Is that you? That's really good looking. Wow, that's hot. Doesn't look like you at all." That's not me. That's Desmond Tutu, who was good enough to grant me an interview in Cape Town when I commenced my next project, which was to write a book about optimism. I decided that I was 35, I needed to now really get serious about finding the secret to motivation and positivity. I noticed that some people seem to be full of energy and positivity and charge, and perhaps that's not true, it just seemed that way, but I wanted to have that. I wanted to have that dynamism. I always found it hard to get out of bed in the morning, and I still do. And I think I judged myself for that and felt like I wanted to have that vim. And so I convinced a publisher to give me an advance to go around the world and interview optimistic people, famous optimistic people. That's what I told them I would do. In the end, I did interview some famous people, but the people who moved me the most were often people who were friends of friends or introduced to me who had overcome terminal illness or not overcome it, or were paralyzed from the neck down, or had survived genocide, and had spiritual awakenings. And this was the beginning of my my spiritual phase, which I'll go into in a minute. On Desmond Tutu, I flew down to Cape Town without a guarantee of an interview, because I was such a hustler at that time. I was so determined to get this book published, which is here, by the way. And he was my, he was my sort of, he was my trophy interviewee, and he kept saying, "I can't meet you, I can't meet you, I can't meet you." So okay, come to the service at 7 a.m. at St. Giles Cathedral, whatever name it is, in Cape Town. And we'll see afterwards if we can have a coffee. And I went along to that service, flew there, and then afterwards we all went off for coffee, him and all his friends and followers, and a breakfast which lasted ages. And then at the very end, and he was really playing with me because he knew I really wanted that interview. He just kept sort of saying, "Well, maybe I'll see you later on." And so then everyone else left, and he said, "Come with me." And he drove me around in his car around Cape Town in his BMW, and we talked about optimism, and he refused to admit that he was an optimist. I kept saying, "You're an optimist." He's like, "No, I'm a prisoner of hope." I was like, "That's optimism." He said, "No." He actually threatened to throw me out of his car. But anyway, thanks to him, I got the deal. That's the book. And that's me on TV after, in Canada. So it was a bestseller in Canada, which was great, because I had always wanted to be on telly and to be famous, and I thought that would make me happy and motivated. Turned out that it did for about 3 months, and then the PR cycle ended, and I was just me again, living in West Norwood in South London, in a shared house with an unemployed actor and just an unemployed guy. And that is at the age of, I'm missing lots of stuff out because I've been to India and had a sort of life turned upside down experience. But at that point, I experienced my first real burnout. There was a sort of coming to a standstill feeling. I didn't know what was happening to me, but I couldn't really muster the energy or the motivation to do anything for about a couple of months. And I got so concerned about this, although I didn't have a family at the time, so my responsibilities were limited. I could spin it out for quite a long time. I called a friend who is a bit telepathic, a bit psychic, and she said, you just need to do nothing. Something is happening, a transformation is happening, you need to give in to it, you need to do nothing. So, oh, wow, really nothing. She said, no reading, no computer, no phone, nothing. Just get up 7 in the morning, go to the park and do nothing. And I did it. I did it for a good stretch of time, and I would sit on a park bench in this lovely park between Norwood and Streatham that no one really knows about. And I would just sit and stare. I would just stare for ages, and I felt like a soldier who'd just been in the trenches and just been pounded by mortars. And why? Just because I've been through the English education system? I mean, I know why. Why? There's so much grief, as if layers of my skin just wanted to fall away. And it would go on and on and on. There was like no end to it. But I obeyed it. I didn't resist it. So depression, Chris mentioned depression, yeah. Just something in me didn't want to try and fix it anymore by making another plan to get famous or start a business. I just give into it. But it was always a bit dicey, because there's always a part of me saying, yeah, but are you going to go mad, or you're going to, are you sure you should do this? You should get yourself going, go for a run, get going. And then it's part of, no, just do nothing. And after I did that for a while, what I noticed was that something really good started to happen. I started to draw like I was a kid, with crayons and paints and pencils, and it was amazing. And I looked at this, I hadn't drawn since I was 15, I was like, oh my God, this is coming out of me, it's incredible. And, it was just shitty drawings, but they were amazing to me, beautiful to me, and I became completely captivated by what's possible when you do nothing. When I do nothing, something happens that's not from my brain. My brain that's trying to fix my life all the time. Stop it. Something else wants to happen when you stop trying to fix things. It didn't stop me trying to fix things, of course. I then got a job, and I got back into the whole life thing. And for the last 10 years, it was 10 years ago now, I've carried this knowledge with me, and I've used it, and I use it when I serve people, in my coaching work, and my leadership work, and in my creativity. And I'm still struggling. I'm still striving. I'm still trying to get a fucking house. I'm trying to get somewhere. Because we live in that world where we're trying to get somewhere. I forgot to show you my hippie phase photos. It's my burned out hippie phase. That's my inner light. And I think I was at the very depths of my decline. I thought worth just juxtaposing the two selves to view the extent of my journey. And I even wrote a book about this insight about stopping, and I called it The Lazy Guru's Guide to Life. I showed that pile of notebooks just to indicate how much time I spend trying to figure out my life, with bullet points and diagrams and resolutions and commitments and goals and tasks and all this stuff that you do because you think you can kind of try and wrestle your life into shape. And I look back at these piles of notebooks 10 years of it. It's like geology, layers and layers of goals and tasks and ideas. Nothing doesn't mean anything, doesn't come to anything, because the reality is that I'm totally okay as I am, and that it's all here. It's all here. And if I can rest in that, that is incredible. And I'm still learning how to do it. But I did write a book called The Lazy Guru's Guide to Life, which I've got here, which is a cartoon guide to flow. And it contains my insights into how to stop and relax and let that creativity happen. How am I doing for time? Yeah?
It's 9:45.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So, 5 more?
Yeah.
So I've gone a bit forwards and a bit backwards and so on, but what I'm trying to say is I got halfway there. I had my burnout. I had my moment of revelation, and I've taken that in, and I create space for people to do that. That's what I do. I create space for people to find that creativity, to find that insight, to find that movement and flow. But I'm not doing it for myself because I'm still trying to get somewhere, still striving. And so the insight that I had, that I wanted to share with you, the positive thing to put in your brains, as Anthea said, was that there are two of you. There is the one that wants to make things happen, because that part of you is a little bit worried and feels like you ought to make things happen. And you need to manage that other part of yourself, the part of you that's lazy and has a body. And then there's the part of you that needs to be managed, apparently, and that's your body and your feelings. And it's a little bit like having a teenager and an adult. And the relationship between the adult and the teenager is everything. And I have learned that I can never force the teenager to do anything at all. I mean, I haven't even got teenagers yet. I've only got a toddler. But I feel like I am a teenager. And in order to get the best out of myself, I really have to give space to that teenager to do what he wants. And stop coming up with ideas for what he should be doing and how he should be using his time. And that is a real trick if you're self-employed, because you do have to make money.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? Well, what I have figured out is that every single day I have to put that creative being first. I have to put aside my ideas about what should be happening, where I should be getting to, what tasks I should be doing, and I have to give space to that part of me where all the juice comes from, and all the motivation and all the energy. Otherwise, I'm just forcing myself to do stuff. Coffee helps, drink some coffee, and then I was like, yes, do some stuff. And I was like, yeah. And then I wake up depressed the next day. Well, of course. Yeah. And when I do that, when I manage to give that part of me space, that means I don't need to think about what I'm going to do. I'm just doing nothing. I can just sit there doing nothing, or just chilling out, or just listening to music, or just, some people do this all the time. Creative people do this already, by the way. I'm not saying this is anything new. I'm just terrible at it. And I think it's the most important thing of all, because when I do it, then magic happens. And then my day is good, and then I am in flow. And I recommend it to anyone. Make space for that part of you that you've been managing for so long. And, stop trying so hard, because it doesn't matter. Sorry for being, passionate. That's the Lazy Guru's Guide to Life in
Russian?
I think it must be Russian, yeah. Every now and then I get sent a copy through the post and I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's Korean. And that's my look now, it's kind of like, I'm a bit more natural. I'm not a crazy hippie, but I'm not I'm not a suit. And I feel like I'm still trying to get to the place of total integration, but I can't do it with my head. I've got to stop doing that. So that's my talk. Oh, there's a little animation. We don't have time to show that. I'll just let it run while I'm finishing up. That's my story. And this animation, by the way, was created for the Lazy Guru by Magali, who's a dear friend of mine, who's the illustrator of the book. And it's a kind of non-meditation meditation. I like to encourage people to do non-meditation. Just do nothing. Just do nothing. Otherwise it's a task. Don't make another task for yourself. Do nothing. Thank you very much.